Let's face it, with the new expansion we've all been focusing on Shurima. We've been trying out the huge range of new champions, and all the fantastic mechanics there. But one thing that there's been a lot less attention on is the new champions that were not from Shurima. This video will take a look at the best new decks introduced this patch that don't include the Shurima region. This is Best New Non-Shurima Decks Patch 2.3. This video has been done in collaboration with BomberTV. Please remember to like and subscribe and turn on the bell notifications too. So let's dive in. This is Kindred Ezreal and features cards primarily from Piltover and Zorn alongside a few Shadow Isles cards including Kindred. It's a very spell heavy deck with 22 in total. It's basically a control deck but actually contains a huge number of cards costing 3 or less, which is typically seen in aggro decks. The deck is actually fairly budget with 2 epic cards in total. The idea behind this deck is to take advantage of the Kindred marks and Piltover and Zorn cheap removal spells to basically remove the weakest enemies, therefore slaying them so Kindred can mark stronger units. Kindred has the effect which the first time you slay a unit each round, it marks the weakest enemy and destroys the marked enemy at the end of the round. By removing the actual weakest opposing units, it should also leave your opponent with fewer units on the board and hopefully a stronger unit can be marked instead, therefore killing the strongest opposing units. The kind of removal we're looking to control the board with are cards like Mystic Shot and the Death Ray package. Removal spells are typically spells that deal direct damage to a unit, where their primary focus is basically just destroying cards and dealing as much damage as possible. Also running the discard package to get to our win conditions faster, mainly Ballistic Bot generating cards to discard, and other discard cards like Rummage. Ballistic Bot creates ignition each round, which can either deal damage to your opponent or be used as a tribute for cards that require discard, so you can discard the ignition. Rummage as an effect is simply discard 2 to draw 2, and that effect is changed to 1 if you've only got 1 card to discard in your hand. Kindred can be a win condition on its own, but most importantly, you've also got Commander Ledros, and occasionally just the good old Ezreal Burn. When Ledros is summoned, he halves the opponent's Nexus health. This should leave it low enough to target your burn spells to the Nexus and win that way. Alternatively, you've got Ezreal, who when he levels up, he has the effect that he deals 1 or 2 to the enemy Nexus when you cast a spell, and depending on whether it was a targeted spell or not, it deals different damage. Most of the removal spells are targeted, so you're going to be dealing 2 damage most of the time in this deck. So overall, this is a very control-like deck, suited for players who always want an answer kind of ready to go. This is Jarvan Garen Midrange. It's basically a mono Demacia deck with 2 copies of the Harrowing Inn from the Shadow Isles. It's your standard midrange deck with lots of cards costing 1 to 4 mana, with every follower costing 4 or less. It's quite an expensive deck with 7 epic cards in total. Jarvan's very interesting. He not only synergizes with elites, but also with scouts, taking advantage of the free attack when he enters the board, and catalysm he generates. With this deck we explore the elite synergies as we basically get quite a lot from this archetype. With a very solid curve starting off with Penitent Squire or Citria of Cloudfield. Citria has been around since beta and is your standard 2/2 elite card. Penitent Squire is a new Shurima expansion card and creates a Tattered Banner when summoned if you behold an elite. Tattered Banner is a 1 mana burst spell that has the effect of granting an ally Challenger the next time you summon a unit this turn. Challenger is a staple for any midrange deck, and this can lead to some really optimal trades early on to help curve. Then you'll be looking at Battlesmith and Grand Plaza on turn 3. Battlesmith grants elites when you summon them 1/1, which is fantastic in a deck like this full of elites. And Grand Plaza you'll be very familiar with from the Targon expansion. This grants an ally 1 attack and challenger on the round it's summoned. Even though it was recently nerfed, it's still a fantastic card in this deck and will generate huge value. Later on we can constantly rally thanks to Garen or Jarvan casting a Catalysm on Grizzled Ranger, which will grant us an attack token, putting a lot of pressure on our opponent that may already be enough to basically finish the game. So you combine this with all the buffing cards in this deck and the challenges that you'll have, so you can basically choose the fights you want and you can basically mid-range your opponent to death. If your opponent survives this, we have some huge finishes as well. The harrowing is there to recover from a losing position by allowing you to resummon a lot of elites to attack. These units are basically going to be ephemeral and going to die on strike, so you can follow this up by casting For the Fallen for basically a close to free refill of your board again. If your opponent is not already dead, basically For the Fallen reduces its cost each time you summon an ally, and harrowing will contribute to this cost reduction greatly, so you're basically going to have 2 huge attempts to basically wipe out your opponent. I can't see you not winning off this. This is Kindred They Who Endure, and it's basically a mono Shadow Isles deck with 3 copies of They Who Endure. For some reason, a huge number of cards in this deck cost 2 mana, and the reason for this being is so many of your cheap minions can die quickly and cheaply early on to fuel They Who Endure's effect. This deck is very budget with no epic cards needed. We all know the They Who Endure archetype, but now we've got some much needed more support and a new champion to aid this archetype. So, Kindred. This deck will naturally summon a lot of units, and it will take advantage of the aggressive nature of sacrificing allies to get some benefits, and now we've got a champion which incentivizes that playstyle, giving us even greater value generation tool in the mid game. Kindred is the latest champion to be added to the Shadow Isles. As quick attack, costs 5 mana, and the first time you slay a unit each round, it marks the weakest enemy and kills them at the end of the round. Slay is simply when you kill an opposing unit, and Kindred levels up when you slay 2 marked units, and then starts gaining 2/2 every time you slay further opposing units. The idea of this deck is simple: be aggressive, swarm your opponent with little units in the early game, and try and win off that. If your opponent manages to survive until late game, hit him with a very big They Who Endure, and then cherry on top, Atrocity. To make it easier to get your They Who Endure and constantly refill your hand, as you're going to be obviously playing lots of small units which die quickly, we run refill drawing cards. So these are cards like Glimpse Beyond, Stalking Shadows, and a new Spirit Leech card. Spirit Leech kills an ally on play to draw 2 cards, so overall this is a very powerful deck that's now got even stronger. Lissandra Control features cards mainly from the Flayord, but with a quarter of the cards from the Shadow Isles. Every Shadow Isles card costs 7 or more mana, so these are going to be used for a strong control focused finish. The deck has a very high number of spells, sitting at 18 in total, and this deck is actually quite expensive with 10 epic cards. This is a usual Shadow Isles Flayord control archetype, but with a twist. This deck rewards turn spent surviving, and not for the usual reason of surviving long enough to gain mana gems. So when I say it rewards time spent surviving, I'm talking about the countdowns on cards like Frozen Thralls from the landmark itself, which in turn can summon an 8 mana Frostguard Thrall with Overwhelm. Linked to this waiting favour will link well with Lissandra, who needs an 8+ mana allies to be summoned, and Drakelorn Inquisitor, who can accelerate the countdown of Frozen Thrall if they are less than 4 in their kind of countdown number. Both of these cards summon Frozen Thrall, so there's some nice combos to be had here. Drakelorn Inquisitor is very important as it allows some crazy scenarios where basically you have an 8/8 with Overwhelm on turn 6 for free. It's absolutely insane. Other than that, we also have the usual tools to control the board like Avalanche and the Runation, and we also have the new additions like Blighted Ravine, which is a very strong card. Blighted Ravine heals your Nexus for 4 when summoned, and it has a countdown 1 effect that deals 2 to everything. Finally, we have the big boys at the end, either Frostguard Thralls and Trundle, another card which works well with cards costing 8 or more mana, so some nice combos here as well. You also have Commander Ledros, who can halve your opponent's Nexus health, and this is obviously a very common appearance in control decks, and you've also got the Watcher from Lissandra. The Watcher in particular is involved in a pretty sick combo involving the 8 mana cost Spectral Matron, so you can play her summoning the Watcher, and you can immediately discount the Watcher in the hand to 0 mana, so that you can play also a second one in a turn, so just in case one was not enough. So you basically have 2 chances to obliterate your opponent's deck, so overall this is a very interesting twist to the evergreen control strategy, involving Freelord and Shadow Isles. And there we go guys, what do you think to these non-Shurima new decks? I saw lots of you guys commenting on previous videos about Lissandra and Kindred in particular, so I was super excited to cover these. I personally think Kindred will be very strong in the meta, and I expect him to have some high win rates in the coming weeks. What's your favourite new champion? I would love to hear in the comments. Up next is Top 10 Decks Patch 2.3, taking a look at the 10 highest win rates in the new meta once it finally settles. See you there. The data presented here is analysed by BomberTV using MOBA analytics. He's a Masters tier player with a background in game theory and game design. He took the most winning archetypes into Master tier, excluding ones with small play rates, analysed their key properties on why they are so strong. Link to his channel is in a pinned comment and in the card above. I've recently set up an Instagram account, @LoreGuides, and I'll be doing a giveaway shortly. Please follow this account for see posts about new videos and for being a chance of winning this giveaway. Please remember to like and subscribe and turn on bell notifications too. See you next time guys.